In a world enamored by Hollywood, its celebrities, their paradigms and ideals, is this where it's at? Join me each week as we discover the deeper meaning, an alternate spark to Hollywood's love, paparazzi, relationships, and empowerment. Yes, my friend, I am sparked by Hollywood. Thanks for joining episode 42 of the Sparked by Hollywood podcast. 17 days after George Farmer met his now wife, Candace Owens, so 17 days after they met, George proposed to Candace. He asked her to marry him. Now, pop culture was like, how do you do this? How do you propose to someone after 17 days? Do you even know her? Does she even know you? What are you basing your love on? When we date someone, when we're interested in seeing if they are compatible with us for marriage, there are so many levels of attraction that we go through, that we experience. There is the physical attraction. There are the looks. There is how the person makes us feel. There is a level of compatibility. And George and Candace were very clear that they felt the compatibility very strongly. Taking intimacy out of the picture and just focusing on how does that person make me feel? What do I want to give to that person? In what way are we compatible? And having that be the focus, that's what Candace and George were after. And that's what they felt with such clarity after 17 days. Now, being that they are public figures and everyone knows about their love story, everyone starts to have an opinion. I think this was too short. I think they should have waited longer. Regardless of our thoughts and our feelings, two people felt that compatibility and saw their future together. And I believe that the dating process is a very subjective time period, and it's a very subjective process based on how the two people feel about and for each other. Nevertheless, we have pop culture telling us, take your time, date for a number of months, date over a number of years, with no actual metric to let us know that when you've reached this mark, then hey, you know that's the person. But it's impossible to give a metric because, like I said, it's very subjective. It's very personal to each couple dating. And yet, we're told, take your time. Date over a number of months. Date over a number of years. You know, I recently asked someone who's in their mid-20s, how many years is a person supposed to date before they know that, you know, that's the right person, that's the one? And he said, I think of it like college. Give it 4 years. So that was his metric, but it might look different for someone else. What if someone else's metric is just a few months because that's all they need to figure out if the compatibility between the two of them has worked? That the love and the attraction is there. That you know that what that person has presented, those are the values that you want to take into your life together. Now again, pop culture says impossible. Impossible to know after a few months because you haven't lived life enough together. But then again, where's the metric in that? How do we know what long enough is? What experiences do we as a society have to live together in the dating process in order to know, okay, we've lived this amount of time, we've gone through these experiences, now we're ready? There is no metric. You know why? Because we'll never be ready. We are never going to be in a situation where we know everything about the person. You know why? Because us as human beings, we are always evolving. We are always living new experiences, a new life that we didn't have yesterday. The new life, the new scenarios, the new circumstances may involve children, may involve work, may involve family members, may involve health. We never know what is going to come around the corner, what God has laid out for us in life. So to think that this notion that we will be ready for tying the knot because we know everything about the person, we know how they're going to respond in every situation coming up until the last day on earth is impossible to prepare for. But we can prepare by understanding the person's values, by understanding the person's love languages, by understanding what that person has lived, how they have experienced life, and what they might be taking with them in the future years, in the future days, in the future months, right? Because we all bring a past experience, a past perspective, a past lesson into whatever we are going to be living in the future. It may dictate how we communicate with family, with spouse, with colleagues. It may dictate how we raise our children. But at the same time, we are all able to learn. And when we learn and we garnish new tools, then things could change. Things could change for the better. Things could change for the worse. There's so much that is brought into the picture. Again, it's impossible to be, as pop culture says, completely prepared. Again, I just want to clarify. This isn't to discount the amount of time that a person needs to date. Each person should take the amount of time that they need to feel that attraction, to feel that love, to feel that compatibility, but it doesn't have to be dictated by other people. It doesn't have to be dictated by society or Hollywood for that matter. It needs to be dictated by the couple themselves. One of the top questions that people Google about relationships actually is, how do I know that he or she is the one? What are the signs that I should be looking out for? And it fascinates me to see that kind of question because honestly, how is Google supposed to know? I mean, Google can tell you lots of answers, but this is an intuitive feeling. Once a person feels compatibility, again, it looks different for so many people. And as awesome as Google is for so many resources that we can find out at a click of a button, sorry, I don't think Google's going to cut that one. It's really, again, down to the communication, down to the feeling, down to, again, the compatibility of the couple. And while we're on the topic of Google, another great question that people ask is, what is the meaning of love? It's one of those top questions on relationships. What's the meaning of love? And for this question alone, I'm sure there are myriads of answers. Again, this is very subjective. It's subjective to you, and it's subjective to him or her who you're dating. So what is the meaning of love? In order to find out what the meaning of love, first start with yourself. What does love mean for you? And then turn that question around and ask the one you're dating. What does love mean for you? And here's the metric, the love metric that you can use in discovering what is your love language, what is love in your capacity, and what is love potentially for them. And this is where we look at Gary Chapman's 5 love languages. The 5 love languages are acts of service, gifts, quality time, physical touch, and words of affirmation. So those are the 5 love languages that Gary presents to society. And he explains that everyone connects to and identifies to a different love language on their level. For some people, their dominant love language is quality time. For another, it might be physical touch. It might be acts of service. And by the way, with all these 5, again, acts of service, gifts, quality time, physical touch, and words of affirmation, it actually manifests different for different people. And that's where the conversations can happen. What does this look like for you? When you say that acts of service is your love language, what kind of acts of service speak to you? Over the course of the conversations together, we can ask the other questions about their love language. What makes them most excited? Who else has provided that love language for them in the past? And the reason why this is important is because we want to know how to give. Judaism teaches us that love happens when we give. And the best way to give is to understand what the other person needs. If they need a love language which we're not comfortable giving, we want to give a different one, that might be a love language. You might be giving them quality time, but what they need right now is an act of service to let them go to sleep because they're overexhausted because they were taking care of the kids all day. Or you think that physical touch is what's needed right now, but really they just need to speak about what happened in some kind of meeting that went awry, and they just need words of affirmation, just letting them know that you're there to listen. So understanding what the other person needs And having that conversation throughout the dating process, even throughout marriage, because again, we evolve. Our needs and wants evolve. And if we're in the position of wanting to give, wanting to serve, wanting to be there and be the best version of us, then that's the kind of conversation we have to have. And of course, we talk about ourselves as well. What speaks to us? What fills up my heart when you give this to me? I was talking to a client of mine, and it became very apparent that love language was never a conversation that took place between him and his wife. They were married for over 10 years. And over the course of the conversation, I asked him what it would look like for him to take his wife out on a walk once a week, just block out time in the calendar. And he said two things. First of all, yeah, we did that in the beginning of our marriage, but then we stopped. And my wife keeps on asking me for it, but I can't do it. I feel like it's shallow. It's not something I like to do. I don't even like to have small talk. We have something to talk about. Got to take care of it. Let's do it. But for me, he says, it doesn't speak to me. What was very clear was that her love language was quality time and perhaps words of affirmation. He was able to identify it, but was he able to give it? Was he willing to give it? Was it his personality? Did he grow up with that trait, giving it to others, understanding that another person needs perhaps quality time? Perhaps, perhaps not. But if we're open to the fact that the 5 love languages are the basis of the relationship thriving and the basic communication around it, that creates the metric for the relationship to continue, for there to be constant conversation for bettering ourselves and being able to give to the other and being open and transparent what works for us, how we want to receive and fill up our glass of love as well by them. So, you want to love? You want to find out if the person loves you? Start by giving and understanding and being curious about yourself and curious about them. And once you figured out that you're both compatible, use this as a foundation, as your metric to continue loving, to continue growing together. Thank you for joining me for today's episode. If you are loving the Spark by Hollywood podcast, kindly leave me a 5-star review on the platform that you're listening on. Be sure to follow me on Instagram at Sparked by Hollywood. That's where the conversations happen. That's where I give you extra content on all my episodes and where you can send me your feedback, your comments, and questions. And finally, in a world where we are all enamored by the spark of Hollywood and its celebrities, always remember your own spark that you carry within you that makes you the gift that the world needs to shine that much brighter. I'll catch you in the next episode.